I want to start today with a confession. For years, the wellness industry has been selling you a story about gray hair, a story about a single vitamin, a secret protocol, a kitchen ingredient that will turn back the clock in 12 weeks. I understand why that story is appealing. I understand why, after decades of dye bottles and salon appointments, you would want to believe that reversal is just 1 tablespoon away. But I am not here today to sell you that story. I am here to tell you the truth about what is actually happening inside your hair follicles as you age, what the real research says, and what genuinely helps. Some of what I tell you today will be less exciting than a miracle cure. All of it will be honest. And by the end, I think you will find that the honest version is actually more useful than the fantasy, because it is a version you can actually act on. I am Dr. James Revealio, and this is Science of Wellness. Let's talk about gray hair. What is actually happening in your hair follicle? Every strand of hair on your head gets its color from pigment cells called melanocytes, which live in a structure at the base of the hair follicle called the hair bulb. These cells produce melanin, the same pigment responsible for skin color, and they deposit that melanin into each strand of hair as it grows. When you are young, this system runs at full capacity. Melanocyte stem cells continuously replenish the pigment-producing cells, so every new hair that grows in comes out with color. Somewhere in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, depending on your genetics, that system starts to slow down. This is not a malfunction. It is a normal, well-documented part of aging, and it happens to essentially everyone eventually if they live long enough. There are a few things we understand fairly well about why this happens, and I want to walk through them honestly, including where the science is solid and where it is still uncertain. The first factor is melanocyte stem cell depletion. Research published in the journal Nature by Dr. Mayumi Ito and colleagues at NYU found that melanocyte stem cells in hair follicles can become stuck in an intermediate state. They stop functioning as stem cells, but never fully differentiate into working pigment cells either. Over repeated hair growth cycles, this population of functional stem cells gradually shrinks. Eventually, there simply aren't enough of them left to pigment new hair. The second factor is oxidative stress. Hydrogen peroxide is produced naturally in small amounts by every cell in your body, and your hair follicles do accumulate more of it as you age, partly because the enzyme catalase, which breaks hydrogen peroxide down into water and oxygen, becomes less active over time. This was documented in research out of the University of Bradford, published in the FASEB journal. That part is real. What is not well established is that taking a specific vitamin supplement reliably reverses this process in a way that restores visible pigment in most people. The Bradford researchers were describing a mechanism, not announcing a cure, and it's an important distinction that gets lost in a lot of wellness content. The third factor is genetics, and this one matters more than most people want to admit. Studies of twins have shown that the age at which you go gray is strongly heritable. If your parents grayed early, you likely will too, regardless of diet, stress, or supplements. A 2016 study in Nature Communications identified a specific gene, IRF4, associated with gray hair onset. Genetics doesn't explain everything, but it explains a great deal more than most miracle cure content wants you to know. The fourth factor, and this one surprises people, is stress, but not in the way folklore describes it. A 2020 study published in Nature by researchers at Harvard University found that acute stress in mice caused rapid, permanent depletion of melanocyte stem cells, essentially burning through the pigment-producing reserve. This is one of the few studies that gives real biological weight to the old idea that a stressful period can trigger new gray hairs. It's a compelling finding, though it's worth noting it was conducted in mice, and how directly it translates to long-term human graying patterns is still being studied. What about vitamin B12 and other nutrient deficiencies? Here is something that is genuinely useful and grounded in solid evidence. Certain nutrient deficiencies are associated with premature graying, and in those specific cases, correcting the deficiency can help. Vitamin B12 deficiency is the best documented example, because B12 is essential for healthy red blood cell production and cellular energy metabolism. A deficiency can affect rapidly dividing cells, including those in hair follicles. Several clinical case reports have documented that patients with B12 deficiency who also had premature gray hair saw some repigmentation after their B12 levels were corrected through diet or supplementation. This is an important distinction, so let me be precise about it. This does not mean B12 reverses normal, age-related graying in someone with adequate B12 levels. It means that if you are one of the people whose graying is being driven, in part, by a genuine B12 deficiency, correcting that deficiency may help. B12 deficiency becomes more common as we age, partly because stomach acid production declines and that acid is needed to release B12 from food. It is also more common in people taking certain medications, like metformin or long-term acid reducers, and in people following strict vegetarian or vegan diets. If you are curious whether this applies to you, the honest and useful step is simple. Ask your doctor for a blood test. AB12 level, along with a complete blood count, will tell you in a few days whether this is relevant to your situation. If your levels are low, correcting them is straightforward and can improve far more than just hair color. B12 deficiency, left unaddressed, can affect nerve function and cognition over time. If your levels are normal, you'll know that your graying is following a different, non-nutritional path, and you can stop wondering about it. The same logic applies to copper, iron, and folate. Deficiencies in any of these have been associated in some studies with premature graying, and correcting a genuine deficiency may offer modest benefit. But taking large amounts of these nutrients when you are not deficient does not produce additional pigment, and in the case of iron and copper, taking more than you need can actually cause harm over time. Does anything reliably slow or improve the appearance of graying? I want to separate two different questions that often get blurred together: reversing gray hair and supporting the overall health of your hair and scalp. The second question has much better answers than the first. Circulation to the scalp genuinely matters for hair health. A 2015 study published in the journal Skin Appendage Disorders found that rosemary oil applied to the scalp performed comparably to minoxidil in a trial focused on hair density and growth over 6 months. That trial was about hair, thickness, and growth, not pigment. I want to be clear about that, because a lot of content online blurs that line. Rosemary oil has real, published support for scalp and hair health generally. It does not have published evidence that it restores pigment to gray hair. Scalp massage on its own, separate from any oil, has been shown in small studies to increase scalp blood flow and may support hair thickness over time. It's a low-risk, low-cost habit. A few minutes of gentle massage with clean hands or a mild oil, a few times a week, is unlikely to do harm and may support overall follicle health. Diet matters more broadly than any single nutrient. A pattern of eating that supports good circulation and reduces oxidative stress throughout the body. Vegetables, fruit, lean protein, and healthy fats. The general pattern seen in Mediterranean-style diets is associated with better outcomes for skin and hair health generally, alongside the much larger benefits it offers for heart and brain health. I would rather you adopt that pattern for your whole body than chase a single ingredient for your hair. Protecting the hair you have matters too. This is where I want to be honest about something the industry doesn't like to talk about. How you dye your hair affects the condition of your hair and scalp over time. Permanent oxidative dyes, which use hydrogen peroxide to open the hair cuticle and deposit color, are harder on the hair shaft than semi-permanent or demi-permanent options, especially with repeated use over years. This doesn't mean dyeing your hair is dangerous or that you need to stop. It means that if you are noticing dryness, breakage, or scalp irritation, switching to a gentler formulation, or spacing out your color appointments may improve the condition of your hair, even if it doesn't change how quickly new gray comes in. What doesn't hold up? I think it's worth naming a few claims directly, because you will encounter them, and I would rather you hear the honest assessment from me than be misled elsewhere. The claim that a single food, taken daily, reverses gray hair within a few months does not hold up against the actual clinical evidence. Most of the research cited to support these claims is either decades old, involved very small numbers of participants, was never replicated at scale, or is being stretched well beyond what it actually demonstrated. Real melanocyte stem cell depletion, the kind documented in the NYU research, is a structural change in the follicle. Once those stem cells are gone, no vitamin brings them back. This isn't me being a pessimist. It's what the biology tells us. I'd also gently push back on the idea that gray hair is something to be fixed at all. It is a completely normal biological process. If you enjoy coloring your hair, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a personal choice, the same as any other. But if a video is telling you that your gray hair is evidence your body is failing you, I want you to hear a different message from me. It isn't. It's evidence that you've lived long enough to have gray hair, which is something a great many people never get the chance to do. What I'd actually recommend. So let me bring this together into something practical, because I know you came here for something you can use. First, if you're curious whether a nutrient deficiency is contributing to your graying, ask your doctor for a simple blood panel that includes B12, iron, and thyroid function, since thyroid imbalances have also been associated with hair changes. This costs you very little and gives you a real answer instead of a guess. Second, Take care of your scalp the way you take care of any other part of your skin. Gentle massage, a healthy diet, and protecting your hair from excessive heat and harsh chemical treatment will support the overall health and appearance of the hair you have, even if it doesn't change its color. Third, if you want to experiment with rosemary oil for scalp and hair health, the existing research gives it reasonable support for hair density, and it's low risk for most people. A small patch test first, then a few drops mixed with a carrier oil massaged into the scalp a couple of times a week is a reasonable and safe thing to try. Fourth, and I say this as someone who has spent decades looking at this research, be skeptical of anyone, myself included, who tells you a single ingredient reverses a process this complex. The people making those claims are usually selling something. The real story, the one backed by real journals and real researchers, is more nuanced, and it points toward genetics, cellular aging, and overall health rather than any single kitchen ingredient. A word about supplements you'll see marketed for this, because I know some of you will search for this after watching. I want to walk through a few of the specific products you're likely to encounter so you know what you're actually buying. Biotin is probably the most heavily marketed hair supplement on the market, and it's worth understanding what it actually does. Biotin is a B vitamin involved in keratin production, and true biotin deficiency, which is genuinely rare, can cause hair thinning and skin problems. But most people, especially those eating a normal varied diet, are not biotin deficient. Taking large doses of biotin when you aren't deficient has not been shown to change hair pigment, and there's an additional practical issue worth knowing. High-dose biotin supplements can interfere with certain blood tests, including thyroid panels and some cardiac tests, producing falsely abnormal results. If you take a biotin supplement, it's worth mentioning that to your doctor before any blood work. Catalase supplements, which claim to replace the declining enzyme directly, run into a basic problem of digestion. Catalase is a protein. When you swallow it, your digestive system breaks it down into individual amino acids, just like any other protein you eat, whether that's from a steak or a supplement capsule. It does not survive digestion intact, and it does not get transported to your hair follicles as a functioning enzyme. This is simple, well-understood physiology, and it's one of the clearer reasons to be skeptical of that particular category of product. PABA, para-aminobenzoic acid, has a genuinely interesting research history worth knowing about honestly. Early 20th century research, including a well-known 1941 study, reported repigmentation in some participants given PABA. It's real historical research, and I don't want to dismiss it. But it's also nearly a century old, involves small numbers of participants, was never replicated in a large, well-controlled modern trial, and PABA supplementation carries some real risks at higher doses, including gastrointestinal upset and, in rare cases, liver effects. Modern dermatology has largely moved past PABA as a serious intervention for graying, precisely because the early findings were never confirmed at scale. If a product is built around a single 80-year-old study with no modern replication, that's a reasonable thing to be cautious about. None of this means every hair supplement is worthless or that the people selling them are acting in bad faith. It means the evidence for pigment reversal specifically, as opposed to general hair and scalp health, is thin across the board. I'd rather you spend your money on a good multivitamin if your doctor confirms you need one, or simply on better food, than on a product marketed with a dramatic before and after story and very little behind it. How to talk to your doctor about this. If any of what I've described today resonates with you, whether that's a family history of early graying, some recent stress, or just general curiosity, it's worth bringing this up at your next appointment rather than trying to sort it out on your own. A simple conversation might sound like this. I've noticed more graying recently, and I'd like to rule out anything nutritional. Could we check my B12, iron, and thyroid levels? That's a reasonable, specific request that most primary care doctors can act on in a single visit, and it costs you nothing beyond what your regular blood work already involves. If your labs come back normal, you'll have real peace of mind, and you can stop wondering whether you're missing something. If they turn up a deficiency, you'll have found something worth treating for reasons that go well beyond hair color. Either outcome is a win, and it's a far better use of your time and money than a supplement built on marketing rather than evidence. A final thought I know that for a lot of you watching, this isn't really about hair color. It's about feeling like yourself, about looking in the mirror and recognizing the person looking back. That's a completely valid thing to care about, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I'd rather give you the truth and the tools to make an informed decision than sell you a fantasy that leaves you disappointed in 3 months. Whether you choose to color your hair, let it go gray, or try some of what we discussed today, that choice is entirely yours. My job is just to make sure you're making it with accurate information. If you found this useful, I'd genuinely like to know. Did you learn something today that changed how you think about your own hair? Tell me in the comments. And if you have a parent or a friend who's been chasing one of these miracle cures, consider sending them this video instead. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is hand someone the truth. I'll see you in the next one.